Welcome to Caregivers and Candid Conversation podcast. I am Lashina McBride, the host and the executive director of We Support Caregivers Incorporated. We Support Caregivers is a 501c3 organization whose mission is to encourage and empower individuals who care for their elderly loved ones to cultivate and focus on self-care. To make a donation or to learn more about us, please visit WeSupportCaregivers.org. And caregivers, while you're on our website, be sure to check out everything that we've made available to you. From our Care Connection emails that you can subscribe to, from our self-care support text that you can join, from our self-care support kits that you can sign up to possibly receive one, the birthday club, our free educational resources, and more. Again, visit WeSupportCaregivers.org and check all these resources that are available to you, the caregiver.
We all know that social media is full of information, but you have to keep scrolling to find what pertains to you. Well, caregivers, did you know that you can have your information about what we offer to caregivers delivered straight to your email? We Support Caregivers has created a newsletter just for you titled The Care Connection. It's delivered to your inbox once a month. Caregivers, stay connected and stay in the know by going to our website at www.WeSupportCaregivers.org and sign up today. Let us support you on your caregiving journey. We support caregivers because caregivers deserve self-care.
Hey everyone, do you know that We Support Caregivers has sponsorship opportunities? What a great opportunity to support the community and promote your business at the same time. We Support Caregivers offer sponsorship levels which include individual, small business, entrepreneurs, and corporate sponsorships. Our sponsorship packages are loaded with benefits for each sponsorship level. Some benefits include getting featured in our Care Connections newsletter, to a 60-second commercial airing during our podcast episodes. There is something for everyone. Are you interested? Visit WeSupportCaregivers.org to fill out the sponsorship interest form. Remember, your donations and contributions help us continue to help other people. We Support Caregivers Incorporated because caregivers deserve self-care. Welcome to another Caregivers and Candid Conversation podcast. I am Lashina McBride, your host, and I have the pleasure of having today with us is Miss Celeste Wooten. Y'all know who she is because she's on our board, on our team. But again, I'm going to let her introduce herself just for, respectful purposes. So Celeste, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Hello. Again, my name is Celeste Wooten, and I am a certified hospice and palliative nursing assistant, as well as a end-of-life doula. Some people ask what exactly is that, and I like to reference it to the fact of we have a birth doula for mothers who are about to give birth, and an end-of-life doula is a non-medical role who can be there to provide assistance to the loved one who is transitioning as well as to the family.
Awesome. So this podcast episode, we're going to be talking about and have a candid conversation regarding transitional care. Because of, what Celeste does for a living, she's going to be explaining to us what is transitional care, when it should be in place, and things of that nature. So the first thing I want to ask you, Celeste, is explain to us what is hospice. I know, of course, at some point, caregivers are going to have hospice in, depending on the situation. I know I had hospice in for my mom. Actually, my mom was on hospice 3 times. And the last time that she was on hospice, that's when she actually transitioned.
Right.
So just explain to us what that is. When should hospice be in place? and so on and so on. So go ahead.
Okay. So with hospice, hospice is a program to provide care and emotional support to someone with a terminal diagnosis of 6 months or less in a setting where the quality of life is maintained for the patient, but we can also help the family as well in that care. I am a very big advocate of starting hospice before it is needed.
Really?
I tell people to have the talk. If you ever follow me on Facebook, I do a lot of posts where I say, have the conversation, have the talk. Because you don't want to wait till you get that diagnosis to be scrambling around trying to figure out what your loved one's wishes are, what they want to do, what they don't want to do. So it really is better to have that talk before you even get the diagnosis. Because when you get the diagnosis, you are reeling from the fact that you are being told that you have 6 months or less. And you don't want to be sitting there going, I don't know what to do.
Got it.
So I always tell people all the time, you may not need hospice at this moment, but ask your doctors for information. Ask them what their opinion of hospice is. And just talk to them about it. Have that conversation before you need it.
So be proactive and get it in place, or at least, get some companies that you think you might need or want, what have you.
Absolutely.
I just like how you explained what it is, because I was always given the impression and told, like, it wasn't so it's not glamorous, but the elegant, the respect, how you explain it. You know what I mean? The way I was told it, it's like pretty much, this is like the final for them to, transition.
Right.
It wasn't given to me the way, or explained to me the way you explained it so elegantly with this respect to it. Okay, so someone has to, have 6 months or less to live. And it should be something the caregivers and the rest of the family look into prior.
Right. And what you can start doing is some of the symptoms that may qualify you for hospice is frequent hospitalizations.
Okay.
Significant weight loss. If you notice that your loved one is losing weight without trying, and you're starting to see it in their face, their clothes are hanging. You'll start to see that happening. A change in their mental, cognitive, or functional abilities.
Okay.
Increased weaknesses, recurring UTIs or infections.
Yeah.
And then if they give you the indication that they no longer want to go to the hospitals anymore.
Right.
If they are done, as those that work in hospice, we hear that the patients will say, I'm done.
Right.
I'm done. I don't want to go anymore to the hospitals. I don't want to be poked. I don't want to be prodded.
Yeah.
I just want to live. And so, as you were saying a few minutes ago, the way that I explain people to hospice about hospice is that hospice is about quality of time versus the quantity of time you have left. And it's not about dying. It's about living.
Just with that set amount of time you have.
That set amount of time you have. It's not about dying. It's about living.
Right.
I tell people all the time when I go to visit them that I can't help you die any faster. I can't do nothing about that. And that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to help you make memories with your family, however that looks like to you. I'm here to make sure you're comfortable, to make sure that your environment is suited for what's going on with you, and to help with your family. Hospice has such a bad reputation because everybody says, you're going on hospice, you're going to die soon. Now, we've had people where I work on hospice that graduated because they just needed that extra care at home, and they stabled out. And we had a graduation party.
Oh, wow.
We were like, you're graduating off of hospice, and they laugh and giggle about that because, again, even with doctors, it's such a it's a powerful word, that can invoke so many emotions.
It does.
When those emotions are not addressed correctly, it makes it for a bad experience, and it's really not.
Right.
It's really not.
Right. Because when my mom was on hospice, the first time she was on hospice, it's because she was in denial of the fact that she had to be on dialysis.
Mm-hmm.
So her doctor said, "You're going to need dialysis." So when she didn't want to get the fistula, process started, the fistula placed in her arm, she went home on hospice. She probably was on hospice a couple of months until she like, Sheena, okay, I don't want to just lay here and die like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, Mom, that means you're going to have to start dialysis.
Mm-hmm.
So, I took her back to the hospital. I remember it was in the middle of the night. I took her back to the hospital. They admitted her, and I explained to her, her condition is because she didn't want to start the process of dialysis. So, her same doctor came in. He was like, okay, Miss McBride, you're here now. We got to start. So that's when they placed her catheter in. Mm-hmm. And then they scheduled her a vascular appointment so the fistula can be placed.
Right.
So she was off hospice, but she, had to start going to dialysis. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I've experienced hospice different ways.
Right.
But the final time, that's when, we knew, because she was done.
Right.
She was done, and that was that. She was probably done a lot. And here's where, like you said, it invokes so many different emotions. She was probably done a long while ago, but It was me that's saying, come on, Mom, you still go.
Exactly.
It was me.
Exactly.
It was me. And I can admit that, but I got to the point where I was so burnt out and tired. And I think what did it for me was they called me and said, your mom put out her needles. What did it for me was she was fighting the transport workers that was transitioning. And she would either tell me, why you keep making me go? I said, Mom, you know what? You don't have to anymore. And I remember when I called my family, I went into our closet. First of all, I cried. I cried because I was like, I knew,
Right.
And it was just me and a conversation with God. At first, I kind of already had, I kind of already knew. So I had that conversation. I was like, Lord, I can't anymore. And it's like, it was at that moment when I just released it. And, I had my moment. I cried. I went up because we had a big closet, and I went in, and that was kind of my place where I prayed. I cried. I was like, Lord, I can't, And then at that moment, it was like, okay. And then I was in a closet. I called my sisters. I said, listen, Mom is not doing dialysis anymore. She done, and I'm crying. I'm done too,
Mm-hmm.
And that was just that. So, I get it and I understand. So I had to really, I guess I went through that kind of denial phase. But when she was pulling out her needles and, me working in dialysis now, knowing how that's like a crime scene when somebody do that.
Mm-hmm.
When she put out her needles and then fighting transport workers, that was all saying she was done. And she would tell me, she said, why you keep making me come? I don't want to come. I was like, okay, Mom. And that was that. And after that, hospice came into play. We got things in place. It wasn't my first rodeo about hospice. So I kind of knew. And I was like, okay.
And that's a caregivers. We hear that so many times.
Yeah.
It's like, especially in our culture, the African American culture, our love language is food and caregiving.
Yeah.
And so, all we know is to make somebody better, fix them some food, love on them, and keep them going. Because that's what we were taught. We were taught, to take care of, our loved ones. And so that's kind of like a big thing that comes up. Because a lot of people say, well, if you put them on hospice, they're going to tell you to stop feeding them. That's going to kill them. That's not true. A lot of people don't understand that when you are in the transitioning phase, actually food can hurt you. Because we try to portray it as we're up walking around. We need food because we need energy. Mm-hmm. Someone who is on a different kind of journey, you give them food and they can't digest it. Right. They can't get it down. Yeah. It actually causes more pain. So with them, we, suggest the sponges for hydration and stuff like that. But the food thing is a very big thing that caregivers feel so guilty about. And I always say, if they're not eating,
their body's giving you the signal. I don't need anything to eat.
Right.
But I said, if they sit up and ask for a chocolate cake, then by all means, go in the kitchen and make a cake. Right. I said, you read the body signals. And I said, and that's hard as a loved one because you're like, you want them to wake up and get up and conversate with you and do everything. So to hear your loved one say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
Those are heartbreaking words. Right. And it's hard for your loved one to say it just as is. It's hard for you to
receive it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And receive it.
You're right, because my mom, she stopped eating. She just didn't eat. She didn't want nothing. So, we knew it was a hard pill to swallow.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just the journey of it. So you said hospice should be in place. Well, you said, so number one, be proactive about it.
Be proactive. Find out about hospices in your area. Mm-hmm. Find out, what their protocol is. And then if you get that diagnosis, at least you have some idea of the hospices that are in your area, that are around you. You have, and sometimes your doctor's offices can give you referrals to go to. Mm-hmm. Your doctor will, once you pick one, they'll send over the referral to that hospice, and they'll get the process started for you. Usually with hospice, you will have a nurse. There is sometimes an RN and an LPN. You'll have a hospice aide like myself. Mm-hmm. You'll have a social worker assigned to you. You will have a chaplain if you choose, mm-hmm. and a bereavement coordinator. Mm-hmm. So it's what we call an interdisciplinary team. So you have a whole team assigned to you and your loved one to help you get through the journey.
Right.
So it's, I tell people every day is a different day. Every day does not look the same. And I said, you just have to keep that in mind. And sometimes everyone wants to stay on the same routine that, mom got up at 7 a.m. and she ate breakfast at 8. And she had her shower at 9. Right. And we did it. And sometimes it's hard to get everyone to understand that those routines are going to change.
Right.
So that's a caregiver guilt thing. It's, the one that's in there the most mm-hmm. has the hardest time because they're around it and they see the changes.
Right.
And so that's why we make sure that not only are we there for the patient, but we are there for the caregiver, whoever's there the most taking care
Correct.
Of that patient.
And then also, even though we had hospice, it's still the family stayed around a lot. We still had even when hospital wasn't in place, we still had to give her medication and stuff
right.
for pain management and stuff like that.
Right.
So what's the difference between palliative care and hospice care? What's the difference between those two? Because I hear and have heard of palliative care. Right. I've heard doctors refer to palliative care. What's the difference? Can a person have both palliative and hospice? I'm going to let you explain that.
With hospice, you have the diagnosis of 6 months or less, but you're no longer seeking a cure. You're mainly wanting to be kept comfortable. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And with palliative, you're still seeking curative treatments. Okay. And you're getting pain management, stuff like that. So you may not have that 6 months or less terminal prognosis. So that's kind of the difference between that. I always tell people, think of palliative, still cure. Hospice, you're no longer seeking that curative anymore.
Got it. So be proactive, talk about it, get things together, arrange things. And then number two would be, go ahead and start looking for hospice companies and agencies in the area. Maybe choose, have a list or something like that. Mm-hmm. So again, I told you my story, how my mom was on hospice. She was on hospice 3 times and it was the last yes. time. So explain to people that a person can come off hospice. It's not meant for them to, but
it can happen.
It can happen. All right, yes. Go ahead and explain.
I actually had a lady who, she came on to hospice and she was with us, and 6 months went by and we were getting ready to do her research and everything, and she was doing well. So we were we couldn't find she was kind of gaining a little weight, right. And she was stabling out.
Right.
So she got to graduate.
Okay.
And 3 months later, she started losing weight again. Blood work wasn't looking so good, wasn't eating. So she kind of came back on service again. And she teeter-tottered for a little while.
Okay.
And so, I always tell people, look at hospice as an extension of care.
That's a good way.
It's an extension of care. And I always like to remind people, while we're not there in the home with you 24 hours a day, we are there to help alleviate a little bit of, the stressors. And I want to say to any caregiver that is listening to this, if you do sign up for hospice, get you a notebook. Anytime anybody makes a visit to your house and the nurses talk to you, write stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
Ask questions.
Absolutely.
Ask questions. Absolutely. Because in a moment of a crisis or something's going on, you are not going to remember what they told you.
That's right.
So it's better to have written it down, and ask those questions in advance. If my mom gets in such amount of pain, what do I do? How much meds
do I give?
Yeah,
what do I give her?
Get that schedule going. And I'm like, because you don't want to be in a crisis and you're trying to call up whoever you're with and wait for them to call you back and different things like that. You'll have your information there. So I always say, with this journey, be as proactive that you can.
Yes. That is true. I would say, I don't know if I wrote things down. I may have, but because I've been I was caring for my mom for so long.
Right.
It's just things I kind of already knew, the different medications, even when hospital, because again, 3 times.
Yes.
She was
you were a pro by the time the third time rolled around. You're like, oh, I already know that medicine.
3 times. 3 times
Yeah.
She was on hospice. So I was very familiar with it. In that time, I explained to you, when she was on hospice, for me, I kind of grieved my mom while she was living. So, and when I think back, I think I was numb. I got to a place where I was so numb to everything. Mm-hmm. So even when she was, transitioning and stuff, it was, and I said this many times before, it was a release and a relief. You know what I mean? Yes. And I just want to tell any caregiver, don't feel guilty about that. Because nobody knows your journey. I had a very long journey to take care of my mom.
Exactly.
A very long journey. Don't feel guilty if when they transition or in that process, that it's more so like a relief and a release. Because it was a relief because I no longer had to see her suffer. Mm-hmm. It was like eating, breathing, sleeping, suffering all the time. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was a release for her, absent in body, present with the Lord, especially when you made Jesus your Lord and Savior of your life. So my family already knew spiritually she was good. It was a relief because she wasn't suffering anymore. It was a relief of the care, having the responsibility, the care. It was an emotional relief. It was now this doesn't have to weigh so much. But it was a weight because my journey caring for her was a long journey. It was a long journey. Good, bad, ugly, ups and downs. It was a long journey. Yes. So to any caregiver listening, let me make it very clear to you. When the time comes for your loved one to transition, you don't have any guilt to wear if you feel a relief or release in that process.
Absolutely.
You was true to the journey. You was faithful to the journey, and it's now over or about to end. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, allow yourself to feel that relief and release. There's no guilt that you need to have associated with it whatsoever.
That's right.
Whatsoever.
That's right. She took my line. I was about to say that because you would not believe the amount of caregivers that that I've been at the deaths. I've been present.
Correct.
And they will come up and say, "Am I a bad person because I feel relieved this is over?"
Right.
And I'm like, "No, you're not a bad person because to watch your loved one
absolutely
go through that transitional journey, just like it is, a labor to give birth. It is a labor to die.
That is wow. That's
and
the first
so
time I
it's
heard that.
hard, and so you got to watch that. So when it's done, it's not a bad feeling to feel relieved, because that was hard to watch.
Right.
That was
Oh my
hard
gosh.
to do. So, and I tell people, do not feel guilty for that, because it's hard. And, I've had people that we've kept in contact with, and they said that first week, it was hard for me to sleep, but I felt guilty because I stayed in the bed long, or I felt guilty because I didn't clean my house. And I'm like, there's nothing to feel guilty about.
Right.
There's absolutely nothing to feel guilty about. So, I want to just let people know that, again, it's hard to go on that journey, but being prepared, being ready, being acceptable of what is happening, and allowing it to happen. And then once it's over and you feel that release, it's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
Absolutely. So yeah, I will also say, so just to recap, be proactive. Be proactive, talk about it, bring it up, figure out what your loved one wants, things like that. Because we knew it was hospice because, again, my mom, we wasn't going to put her in a nursing home or anything like that, But I have a sister who's been a CNA for, my goodness, the longest time. And, we knew collectively as a family when she ain't going to a nursing home. So, I mean,
Right.
So we knew, we already knew, she wanted to, be at home, and that's, we honored that. So I would say definitely, talk about it, talk about with your family. Then start looking for the hospice companies, agencies that
start interviewing them now.
Yeah, start interviewing now, and then have that list, build that list. Ask around, do your review on them. Again, like you said, interview them, and then don't feel guilty. Because the process is over or about to be over, and you feel the relief and release. Because again, you've been faithful to the journey. You've been the main one there. And, the journey for them and you, it's over. They're not suffering, and neither are you. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
And if I may, I just want to offer a couple of books of reference that I usually tell my families. The Final Act of Living, which is by Barbara Carnes. And Barbara Carnes, if anybody's ever heard of her, she's sort of like the hospice guru. A lot of hospices use her books to give to families. There's another book called Finish Strong, and that's actually what I call the book of preparation.
Wow.
And it kind of gives you some ideas of how to start preparing for your hospice journey. And that book is by Barbara Coombs, Coombs. The next one is called The Conversation.
Ooh, okay.
And that is another book to help families start the conversation of, what their wishes are, and how they want things to be done, and, the hospitals and the hospice and the doctor's offices. So it helps you initiate that conversation, and that's by Angelo Volandis. And then there is a book called The Hospice Heart by Gabrielle Jimenez. And I actually took a class with her, and I've actually talked to her before, and very sweet lady. She's also an end-of-life doula as well.
Okay.
And she's written several books, but I love the book, The Hospice Heart. And then the last one would be The 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying.
Wow.
And that was written by Dr. Karen Wyatt. So all of these books, they are related to hospice, but they are related to getting proactive and starting the conversation before you have to get to hospice. So that, again, you can make sure that your loved one gets their wishes, completed and known, and that the family is all on one accord. So that when you start the hospice journey, that, everybody is all together and doing what they can to make sure that the patient is taken care of.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Celeste. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, education, and experience related to transitional care, such as hospice and everything. Thank you everyone for listening and joining us for another Caregivers and Candid Conversations. Until next time, remember, take care of yourself. Entrepreneurs, content creation should never be your concern. Socially Established LLC is a social media management business whose mission is to alleviate entrepreneurs and small business owners from managing their social media. Socially Established LLC offers content creation and social media management packages for your convenience. Remember, you were never meant to manage everything on your own. Visit sociallyestablished.com to choose your service package today. Socially Established LLC, establishing what entrepreneurs need.
What does self-care look like to you? Does it look like meditation or journaling? Does it look like putting on your comfiest outfit or having a dance break? Does it maybe even look like listening to a podcast, going for a walk, spending time with family and friends? Self-care can look different for each person, but we would like to share some starting points with you. You can go to our website at www.WeSupportCaregivers.org and sign up for our self-care support kit. We choose a deserving caregiver each month to send these intentional items to support your self-care development. We support caregivers because caregivers deserve self-care.